Good evening. Welcome to the Ontario College of Teachers 2023 Virtual Annual Meeting of Members. Before we begin, I would like to share some important information. The meeting is being hosted as a Zoom webinar. This means attendees will not have access to turn on their cameras or microphones. This meeting features simultaneous French and English interpretation and optional closed captioning. To access language interpretation, please click on the globe icon in the meeting controls toolbar and click on the language that you would like to hear. If you're on a mobile device, tap the ellipses in the meeting controls bar, then tap the language interpretation, then tap on the language you want to hear and click Done. To access closed captioning, click or tap on the CC icon in the meeting controls toolbar. At this point, it is my pleasure to introduce our Council Chair, Diana Miles.
Ani, bonjour. Ani, bonjour. Tanzi, wache. Bonsoir, and good evening. As the Chair of College Council, it is my honor to welcome you to the Ontario College of Teachers 2023 Annual Meeting of Members. We begin this evening's meeting by acknowledging that the college offices are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The grounds are also covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We know that many of you are joining us from ancestral lands around the province, and we thank you for taking the time to be here this evening. My name is Diana Miles, Chair of Council for the Ontario College of Teachers, and it is a privilege to be speaking to you tonight. Just a quick housekeeping note before we move on. Tonight's meeting will end with a question and answer session. We will be answering questions that were submitted by attendees when they registered. We received more than 200 questions. And while we will not have time to answer all of them, we will be addressing many of those that fall within the college's jurisdiction. General information that is shared during the question and answer session will also be provided in a follow-up email that will be sent to all attendees later this week. When I last addressed this meeting on behalf of council colleagues, it was to welcome the beginning of a new era, marked by a smaller and more efficient council that is balanced between members of the profession and members of the public. That was only 1 year ago. And given the abundance of what has been accomplished since then, I can say with confidence that we have delivered on the promise of efficiency. That delivery takes the shape of a new 5-year strategic plan that refines how we fulfill our student safety mandate as education continues to evolve. The plan is the product of many months of engagement with many external and internal stakeholders. These stakeholders include federations, faculties, school boards, parents groups, the Ministry of Education, and many others. Crucially, those consultations were informed by historical knowledge and ways of knowing that were generously shared with us by Indigenous leaders who joined us at the core of this stakeholder group. Together, this group represents the rich diversity of Ontario. And together, we developed a plan that can be clearly articulated by 4 key goals. The first goal, accountable and agile processes to certify educators. Simply put, Ontario certified teachers are the backbone of Ontario's publicly funded education system. They are leaders in their classrooms and communities, and the impact they have on students' lives is immeasurable. Our role is to ensure that we only certify those who are suitable for the profession and that those certifications happen in a timely fashion. And that brings us to the second goal, ensuring that Ontario's certified teachers are informed of and held accountable to professional standards. Teaching is a challenging job that requires professional clarity. The college's ethical standards and standards of practice underpin the profession. Further support is also provided by college professional advisories, which will be continually revised and modernized alongside the introduction of new advisories on emerging issues. Professional standards must also be enforced, and that brings us to our third goal: efficient and proportionate responses to alleged and actual misconduct, incompetence, and incapacity. This is foundational to the college's student safety mandate. Complaints we receive about our members are handled with care, discretion, and fairness. Now, I've named our first three goals. However, achieving any of them is not truly possible without the fourth goal: establishing a clear and independent role in the education system. And that brings us back to our newly balanced council. Each of us were selected based on the skills and experience required to govern the profession in a way that puts the interests of students first. That is our commitment. What you've just heard are the broad strokes of the college's new strategic goals. They are the product of more than a year's worth of ideas and discussion. However, those goals can only provide guidance. It's up to the college's operational leadership to follow that guidance over the next 5 years toward a desired future state that equips us to tackle the many challenges that will arise. I'm happy to say that the college is well positioned on that front. I've had the privilege to work closely with the senior leadership team over the past year as these goals took shape. That feeling of privilege is most acute when it comes to working with this evening's next speaker, our Registrar and CEO, Linda Lacroix, Ontario Certified Teacher. A career educator, Linda consistently demonstrates the dedication and public spirit that marks her profession. I've seen the results of that dedication, and I will leave it to her to tell you more about those results. Thank you again for joining us this evening. And Linda, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you for the kind words, Diana. Let me begin by offering my own gratitude for your stewardship of College Council. Our meetings are productive, swift, and efficient. More importantly, they're respectful. Council members arrive prepared, and the questions that are asked make it clear that student interests are at the center of their work. As a group, Council answered our call to help govern the teaching profession. And as a group, they've offered me and the senior leadership team a steady hand, and I'm truly grateful for it. Les mots me manquent pour exprimer à quel point 2023 fut une année déterminante pour l'Ordre. Diana a évoqué les discussions rigoureuses, les consultations approfondies et le travail minutieux qui ont orienté l'élaboration de notre nouveau plan stratégique quinquennal. La planification stratégique était une initiative majeure, mais elle n'était qu'une composante de nombreuses activités que nous avons menées en cours de l'année. In January, we hit the ground running with our ongoing investments in improving our certification and our service timelines. Those investments take many shapes. They include new staff hires in membership services and in IT, updated training and procedures, and further automation of tasks and processes related to certification and supporting member and application files. Allow me to provide you one example of a small change that makes a big difference. The college continues to receive an immense volume of phone calls from members and applicants. Just as an example, in September, we received nearly 4,000 phone calls and responded to 1,400 emails. Now, many of these calls and emails are from individuals who require specialized help, and our membership services staff are here to assist them. Now, that can sometimes mean that callers who are trying to reach us during those peak periods may experience extended wait times. And in those cases, they will now be prompted to use our new callback feature. It allows them to hang up and not lose their place in line while they wait for a college staff member to return their call and offer the assistance that they need. The success of this new feature is a case study of how new technology, when effectively implemented, can provide a better experience for everyone. Une mise en œuvre efficace nécessite une culture d'apprentissage permanente et un état d'esprit axé sur l'amélioration continue. C'est aussi une culture qui exige la souplesse. Cette souplesse est manifestée tout au long de l'année. L'Ordre ayant réagi rapidement pour s'adapter aux changements réglementaires introduits par le gouvernement provincial. We entered 2023 continuing to build on our capacity to more quickly process service requests and applications for certification, including applications from internationally educated teachers. These applications can be complex for many reasons, and these can include issues related to receiving required documents from countries that have been destabilized, or working with applicants to arrange for their documents in languages other than English or French to be translated by an approved translator. These issues require care and time to manage appropriately. I'm happy to say that these efforts have produced results. In fact, as of this evening, the college has already certified more internationally educated teachers than the entirety of last year. In April, the government introduced Bill 98, the Better Schools and Students Outcome Act. The legislation was densely packed with regulatory changes that significantly impacted college operations. We had to move quickly to implement them. As many of you likely know, the bill's headline item was the introduction of a new Transitional Certificate of Qualifications and Registration, also known as the TCQR. The TCQR is intended to ease Ontario's persistent teacher shortage while providing teacher candidates enrolled in a college-accredited initial teacher education program with the opportunity to earn career experience as an OCT in Ontario classrooms. Now, developing and launching a new certificate is no easy feat. It requires careful consultation with stakeholders from across the sector, including federations, faculties, school boards, and parent groups. It required the development and deployment of an internal and external communications plan. And more importantly, it required major changes to our IT processes to facilitate applications from a new pool of teacher candidates. And it had to be ready by start of this school year. The good news is the collective efforts shared by the college and stakeholders paid off. This TCQR officially became available on August 30th. The better news is that together, we have once again proven the value of collaboration and cooperation when it comes to protecting the interests of students. Collaboration, cooperation, sharing of lessons and best practices. These concepts help all of us better understand our respective mandates and the challenges we face in fulfilling them. It also helps us identify opportunities that elevate the teaching profession. It's with confidence that I say the college is a committed partner in identifying and acting on these opportunities where appropriate. It's a healthy approach for Ontario's publicly funded school system, for the dedicated educators and administrators who make up the profession, and for the students. Je vous remercie du temps que vous m'avez accordé ce soir et un grand merci à mes collègues de la profession enseignante qui, jour après jour, font preuve de résilience et de dévouement à l'égard des élèves. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Jonathan Davey. Jonathan is Vice President of Indigenous Financial Services at Scotiabank, and he serves as a member of College Council and also our chair at an Audit and Finance Subcommittee. It's in that capacity that he will be providing you with an update on the college's budget. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Linda, both for that introduction and for the strong leadership that you've shown as Registrar and CEO of the college. And I also want to extend my thanks to Diana, who's shown similar leadership and professionalism to myself and to my fellow council members as we develop the college's new strategic plan. Now, I'd like to begin my remarks by just briefly explaining the role of the Audit and Finance Subcommittee. It's our responsibility to monitor and report to council on the financial activities of the college. We also recommend to council an annual budget, the appointment of an auditor, and the annual audited financial statements. In addition, the subcommittee acts as the college's audit committee for the purpose of reviewing the annual audit scope, audit fees, and audit findings. As subcommittee chair, I'm pleased to take part in this annual meeting of the members to provide an update on the college's finances. We've heard a lot this evening already about the updated strategic plans, goals, and a desired future state. My duties include ensuring that the college has the resources required to execute these adaptive changes as efficiently as possible. Efficient resource allocation requires a stable financial foundation. And according to the results of KPMG's 2022 audit, the college's finances are presented fairly and represent the financial position of the college for a year ended December 31st, 2022. Now, the audit's key findings is that the budget was balanced without need to access reserve funds, as had been the case in previous years. The subcommittee is aware of the organization's heavy workload, stemming from the introduction and implementation of new registration categories and regulatory amendments. In addition, the organization is confronted with challenges related to inflation, the rising cost of living, and the tightening labor market. Of course, these challenges are not unique to the college. They're being felt across sectors around the world. Nevertheless, given the organization's responsible fiscal management and stable revenue, there are no considerations to increase any college fees, including the annual membership fee. Responsible fiscal management also requires careful stewardship of physical assets, including the college's offices at 101 Bloor Street West in Toronto. Managing commercial real estate is not a frivolous matter. Any decision to sell or downsize without appropriate consideration and rigorous market analysis would be reckless. That's especially true in the current environment of high interest rates and increased office vacancies. Now, right now, it's more cost-effective to maintain the current office footprint. However, college leadership continues to study the issue to determine if additional right-sizing is operationally and financially appropriate in today's work environment. I'd like to close by looking ahead to next year. The 2024 budget forecast reflects what Council has identified as a new normal following the COVID-19 pandemic and the college's modernized governance structure. That means ongoing investments in technology strategy, automation, and additional staffing that will build on existing gains that have improved the service experience for members and applicants while reducing timelines for certification. I want to thank you all very much for your time. And I'll now pass the baton back to Linda for tonight's question and answer session.
Thank you, Jonathan. On behalf of the college and the profession, thank you for the hours you devote to ensuring that the college is on stable financial ground. We'll use our remaining time this evening to answer questions that were submitted by attendees in advance. As Diana mentioned earlier, the majority of the questions received were either specific to an individual file or were outside of our mandate as Ontario's teaching regulator. While I'm unable to answer those questions specifically, I will provide some general information that I hope will be helpful to those who did ask those questions. I'll begin with questions about applying for college certification as an internationally educated teacher. To teach in a publicly funded school in Ontario, you must be a member in good standing of the Ontario College of Teachers. Now, there are 4 requirements for certification for which you need to submit required documents: academic requirement, professional requirement, language requirement, and finally, professional suitability requirement. More information about each of these requirements is available on our website. And while you're on our website, I also recommend you complete the free online assessment to determine if your qualifications meet the college's requirements. And if you decide to apply for certification, I recommend that you begin your application when you have compiled all the required documents. Also of note, additional guidance and advice can be found on our YouTube page. We also offer information sessions on a monthly basis. You can find a schedule for those on our website. Please note that policies and documentation vary from country to country. You can find information specific to many countries in the Becoming a Teacher section on our website. We also heard from many people who are unable to arrange for documents to be sent to us due to circumstances in certain countries. We try our best to help in these situations. And if you're facing this challenge, there's a form. It's called Request for Assistance in Obtaining Documents. That's also available on the website. That would be very helpful. Many internationally educated teachers reached out to us with questions about immigration, immigrating to or gaining employment in Canada. Know that the federal government is solely responsible for all matters related to immigration. You can get more information about immigration, including information related to employment in Canada, from a Canadian embassy, consulate, or by visiting the Immigration Canada website. Many of you reached out to us with questions about finding employment once you have been certified by the college. And again, to clarify our mandate, employment is outside of our regulatory mandate. However, you can find links to several job search resources by visiting the Jobs and Education page on our website. You can also find a complete list of school boards on the Ministry of Education website. Teachers can also explore additional qualification courses, or AQs, for additional teacher education or specialization. Examples that may be helpful to early career teachers are the learning environment, occasional teaching, and also orientation to teaching in Ontario. We've also heard from several people who are wondering about post-retirement work as a teacher and how that may affect their pension. All questions related to teacher pensions, pre or post-retirement, should be directed to the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. More information can be found on their website, www.otpp.com. Next, I'm going to call on Jonathan to answer questions about the college's finances and the annual membership fee. Jonathan?
Thanks, Linda. We've had a number of questions, and we've done our best to group the material questions together and really provide a lot of answers that have to deal with accessing the college's financial information. So, for example, one such question we received was, where can I find data about compensation paid to employees of the college? So information related to the college's finances, including staff salaries, is published yearly in the annual report. And all annual reports are available on the college's website. So it's certainly an excellent resource to check out if you're looking for financial information about the college. Now, we received many questions about the annual membership fee, specifically the $30 increase that was approved by council in the 2023 budget. So with taking your questions, and thank you very much for submitting them, we've done our best to represent a lot of what was being asked in two separate questions. And I'll go through those questions now and provide responses. And these questions, by the way, or at least the two questions I'm going to address, were submitted by a current college member, which we thought encapsulated a lot of what was being asked. So the first question is, can the increase in OCT membership fees be validated, especially in a time of high cost of living with a salary increase that has not matched the cost of living in over 10 years? So, I mean, prior to the 2023 budget, the college held fees steady for 3 consecutive years. I think that's a very important point to make. And this was made possible by prudent financial management in addition to the use of reserve funds. And you'll recall in my statement earlier, I said we did not have to access reserve funds following the last audit. Our 2022 budget review determined that the depletion of those funds and the introduction of additional legislative and regulatory requirements meant that holding the fee at $170 was just simply not tenable. So at an approximate ratio of 1,290 to 1, the college has the highest member to staff ratio amongst all regulators in Ontario. Additionally, the current annual membership fee remains one of the lowest fees amongst that same group. So we're certainly very alive to any change in membership fees, but we think it's important to put it into a context how these decisions are being made. And I understand the members are facing pressures related to inflation and a rising cost of living. That's certainly not lost on any member of the council or any of the leadership. But the college faces those pressures too. it's important to put everything in its proper context when we have these discussions. So just know that we'll always strive to keep the annual membership fee as low as possible. And as I mentioned earlier, we're not considering another fee increase at this time. Now, the second part of the question that had to do with the college and some of the fees related and some of the finances was, what is the college doing for its members? And there was an ask for specificity. What is it that the college is doing really? And so the membership fee is used to fund the college's daily operations. And I'll go through them, kind of point by point so you can get a good sense of what the college is doing for its members. So, the daily operations include licensing qualified teachers, accrediting teacher education programs, approving additional qualifications, investigating and resolving complaints, and providing services in French and English. So the annual membership fee pays for a license to teach in Ontario, Ontario's publicly funded schools, and all regulated professionals in Ontario must pay an annual fee to continue practicing. But paying that fee also enables members to take part in regulating the profession by becoming a part of the college's governance, and that includes council itself, committees, or being a part of the rosters of panelists. So another question that we received has to do with the physical assets of the college, which I touched on briefly in my remarks. And the question specifically is, has moving the main office to a less expensive location been seriously considered? And, as I touched on this earlier, the offices are currently at 101 Bloor Street West in Toronto. They are one of the college's physical assets. And as of now, it's been determined that it is most cost effective to maintain the current office footprint and avoid incurring any costs associated with sale of that property or moving operations to a new location. So certainly something that we consider in a wider context of real estate, the current market for real estate, but certainly appreciate that question as well about the physical assets of the college. Now, our next questions that I'm seeing here have to do with council and governance. So I'll refer them to Diana.
Thanks, Jonathan. So we received several questions from registrants that challenge the effectiveness of the college's modernized governance model. So for example, one of the questions that we received, when will the college actively advocate that the government change the governance model so the college can be self-governing again? So the answer here, there are several publicly available regulator governance reviews that affirm the effectiveness of the college's new governance model, including a review of the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers that was conducted by top consultants Harry Caton and Deanna Williams, to name only one of the many reviews that have now been conducted across regulatory organizations in the province. The new governance structure for OCT is more efficient and cost-effective, and it's balanced between members of the public and those in the teaching profession. It also aligns with modernized principles of right touch or proactive regulation, which was recently introduced by the UK's Professional Standards Authority. More importantly, though, the number of Ontario certified teachers who are now contributing to college governance under this new model has more than tripled compared to the previous governance structure. So council, committee, and roster members are appointed based on specified selection criteria that is required to do the job. The competencies and the criteria can all be seen on our website. They're quite reflective of the geographic, linguistic, and diverse perspectives they bring to the decision-making roles that we have here at the college. Certainly, anyone who's interested in joining us is encouraged to apply on the college website. Our next governance question: why are college members in good standing who reside outside of Ontario often ineligible for committee or governance roles? Well, the selection of council, committee, and roster members is actually governed by regulations of the Ontario College of Teachers Act, which stipulate that individuals must reside in Ontario to be considered eligible to apply for those roles. That covers the general range of questions that we received about governance. I do, though, want to take One last opportunity to encourage interested and qualified members of the profession and the public to consider applying. Linda, I see that our remaining questions are actually related to college operations, so I'm going to hand the proceedings back to you to hand close.
And thank you, Diana. As I mentioned earlier this evening, most of the submitted questions were general in nature and outside of our regulatory mandate or both. However, we did receive some that I'm able to respond directly. So the first one, what are the college's plans to address anti-Black racism? The college has a zero tolerance policy for racism, hatred, or discrimination in any kind or form. Such behavior may be considered grounds for findings of professional misconduct. Our commitment to equity and diversity includes the development of resources that support OCTs in their efforts to create safer learning spaces for everyone. At the end of 2021, we released our professional advisory on anti-Black racism, and it was distributed to all members who received our former publication, Professionally Speaking. You can also download it at no cost from our college website. In 2022, the college introduced our anti-Black racism additional qualification guideline, addressing anti-Black racism to change pedagogy and practice. Since its release, the college has accredited 9 providers to offer the Anti-Black Racism Part 1 AQ course. Another question, for the staff who work on member applications, what do they think they can do to improve the processing time for international applications? Thank you for the question. And I'll begin my answer by thanking our membership services staff who receive and process the substantial volume of applications, documents, and other service requests. The team has been working very hard to refine and enhance procedures to improve processes and processing timelines, and they've gotten results. As mentioned earlier, by the end of September, we had already certified more internationally educated teachers than the entirety of last year. And that said, better is always possible, and we strive for continuous cost-effective improvement. We've hired additional staff, and we're investing in a technology strategy that will further streamline our processes. Our next question has to do with obtaining administrative roles as a technological education teacher. Specifically, the question read, when is the college changing the requirement for technological education teachers to be eligible to apply to take PQP with a more equitable lens? My tech qualification should suffice, along with my 2 specialists. Well, this is a well-timed question, so I'm glad you asked. Earlier this year, the college consulted a wide range of stakeholders about modernizing technological education in Ontario. The collected feedback is currently informing a thorough review, including potential changes to requirements. I'm not able to provide any specifics at this point, since any such changes would require both the approval of council and the provincial legislature. However, I can assure you that we will notify all stakeholders, certified tech education teachers included, when and if changes are introduced. There were a handful of questions related to the new transitional certificate, which I touched on in my remarks earlier this evening. The first question is, why does the college allow student teachers to work as supply teachers when on some days there's not enough work for licensed occasional teachers? The college developed and launched the transitional certificate following a request from the Ministry of Education that was included in Bill 98. It's important to know that teachers who hold a transitional certificate are college members in good standing. They're eligible to teach in Ontario's publicly funded schools and are expected to uphold our professional and ethical standards. Failure to do so could result in them being subject to the college's investigative or disciplinary process. They're also expected to prioritize the successful completion of their teacher education program. Next is a question about transitional certificate eligibility. Why aren't internationally educated teachers who are waiting to be certified by the college eligible for the transitional certificate? Well, the answer to this question is the provincial legislation only provides the college with the authority to grant the transitional certificate to teacher candidates who are enrolled in an accredited Ontario teacher education program or hold a comparable transitional certificate from another Canadian province or territory. These next questions were submitted by someone who would like to know about supporting student mental health. There's multiple parts to this question. The first is, how does the college support the student versus its members? Now, the college's top priority is protecting the interests and well-being of every student in Ontario. Of course, that includes students who experience challenges related to mental health. They followed that question with, what are the measures implemented or what resources are deployed? Who are the skilled workers at the schools to offer support in times of student distress? Well, the college offers these resources to OCTs as professional advisories that are available on our website, specifically supporting students' mental health and also responding to the bullying of students. As for the placement of skilled workers in schools, this is an employment matter that it's really outside of our regulatory mandate. So I encourage you to consult with your local school board for that portion of your question. Finally, they asked, at what point will the college deem the complaint around a situation serious enough to investigate a member? This is a tough one because by law, we're unable to comment on any individual investigation, nor can we confirm or deny whether any particular investigation may be going on. So I encourage you to visit the public protection section on our website to learn about our process and how we resolve complaints. And I think you'll find the information you're looking for in that section. And this brings us to the end of the questions we're able to answer tonight. A lot of information was shared in a short period of time this evening. Know that everyone who registered for the meeting will receive an email in the coming days that will recap most of it. A video of this recording, a recording of this particular meeting will also be posted on our website in the coming weeks as soon as it's ready. I do want to thank again, Diana and Jonathan, for being with us. And thank you to everyone who joined our virtual annual meeting of members tonight. Miigwech, good night. Et bonne soirée.
Good night.